You can find the product featured in today's video and many more at Dan's Dinosaurs. Check out his site at the link in the description below, and be sure to mention that Killer Shrew Fan sent you. Now, on to the review. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Killer Shrew Fan's Killer Toy Reviews. And I know, it isn't Sunday, but I wanted to go ahead and do a review today anyway, because it's actually my birthday! Woo! Yeah! Another year of life on this earth, and I'm still talking about dinosaur toys. Let the existential crisis begin. Anyway, since it is my special day, I figured I needed to talk about a special figure. And since I technically ordered the Nanmu Giganotosaurus as a birthday gift to myself, then I guess that has to be the one. The Nanmu Giganotosaurus, aptly named Behemoth, is the latest offering from the rapidly growing line and has quickly asserted itself among Nanmu's best, given its high level of detail, impressive paint job, and massive size. I did an unboxing of it about a week ago, and I could certainly understand what all the praise was about, and I'm gonna be honest, I'm still riding the fumes from that high I got from opening this absolute beaut. And I'm super excited to give you guys a closer look at it. And in light of all the ground we have to cover, I will not be discussing the packaging, as I went over all of that in the unboxing video. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, be sure to check out that video at the link below. Now with that out of the way, let's get to Behemoth. First, gotta go over his base. This is the third Nanmu figure to come with a base, and it looks like they're going to be carrying that trend forward with their upcoming V-Rex and Bull Rex. But unlike the previous Allosaurus and Ceratosaurus figures who need their bases to stand, the base for Behemoth is an optional addition to the figure. With that in mind, how does it hold up? Well, I think it's safe to say that it isn't the most groundbreaking addition to a dinosaur figure out there. You can see that it's a rocky surface, complete with cracks, ridges, and divots. The base color is a slate gray with a sort of dusty yellow dry brushed across the top. The bottom features the Nanmu logo as well as the Behemoth title against a flat black plastic. But beyond that, there isn't much to it. It does what a base is supposed to do, helps the figure stand, while adding an additional noteworthy display element to the piece, but it's a far cry from the work of Vitae or even PNSO when it comes to bases. It does bolster the presence of an already premium looking model, but if that's not important to you, then it really doesn't seem to be essential. I think there was a statement from Nanmu that this figure was actually produced with reinforced ankles to prevent it from warping down the road. I'm yet to see if anyone has tested this assertion, but it seems to hold up so far. Case in point, Behemoth. On the turntable, no base, and no balance problems. Personally, I always like a good base. I think it can add a lot to a model, and I am glad I went for one for Behemoth here. But if you want to save some money, I think you'll be fine without it. Now let's talk about Behemoth himself. There he is with a nice 360-degree look on his base, and yeah, there's no two ways about it. This is an awesome figure. It has an absolute ton of detail, the technical term being a butt ton, and the color scheme is gorgeous. All of that combined with its enormous size makes Behemoth a showstopper of a piece. There are a couple of things that are holding it back, but in the face of this thing's overall beauty, they are very small. Let's go in for a closer look, starting as we always do with the head. So taking a look at the head, you can see that Behemoth is just chocked full of detail, with scales of varying shapes and sizes adorning the entire surface area of the face. You've even got some raised scales on the lower jaw to give the detail some additional dimension. The scale work here is so meticulously addressed that you can even see the little sensory pits sculpted into some of the scales, which is a very croc-like detail that works to tie into the more obvious crocodilian aesthetics on the rest of the body, but I'm getting ahead of myself. As far as details on the head that aren't scales go, you can see some striations above the mouth, as well as a row of hornlets that grow up the length of the snout to above and behind the eyes. The eyes themselves are quite interesting, with a green sclera, crimson and pink iris, and black pupil. A lot of colors. Reminds me of those gobstoppers that change colors the more you lick them. There is a good bit of shrink wrapping going on in the orbits and fenestra, but of course I'm not surprised since Nanmu doesn't really do scientific models, so there's an expected amount of stylization when it comes to anatomy. That being said though, they seem to have captured the Giganotosaurus skull shape quite well here, right down to the angled chin, so there's that. The teeth on this figure are amazing. With the semi-translucent, shiny yellowed plastic, they look like the real deal, right down to the sort of brown weathering that's been applied. It almost looks like dried blood in places, which is a really nice touch. The jaw on this figure is articulated, but like the articulation on many of the Nanmu figures, it is a bit hit and miss. For one thing, this is as flush as you can close the jaw, and although it does open to a good width, the hinge is a bit loose, meaning if you don't open it to its full width, it'll just sort of flop there on its own. So it's either fully opened or almost all the way closed. There is no in between. On a higher end model like this, that's kind of a letdown. I would hope that the hinge would be a bit better built. Still, credit where credit is due, Nanmu have masterfully disguised the inevitable seams that come with an articulated jaw. I mean, even in a close-up like this, it's still very hard to determine where the pieces are joined, which is impressive. Taking a look inside the mouth, you can see that the cheeks are incredibly well done, looking quite fleshy with their folds and pink colors and high gloss. The tongue has a fat, rounded shape to it, sort of interesting. I feel like pointed tongues are almost always done, so there's another sort of crocodilian-like feature on Behemoth here. The roof of the mouth is awesome. The palate has been beautifully rendered, if you can see it in there, and you've even got those sort of nasal openings, which is a wonderful detail. The throat is sculpted so far back, and it really gives this thing the appearance of a functioning mouth hole. The top of the head is also not without its unique treatment, featuring larger, flat, armor-like scales that grow in size the further back on the head you go. So all in all, the head on this thing is pretty amazing. Going down the neck, you can see there is a ton of detail in the skin work as Behemoth cranes his head over his left shoulder. There's buckling, baggy skin hanging around the throat with larger bunching up folds on the ventral region. You can also see the crocodilian-like scoots begin just past the head and run down onto the back of the figure, and of course, the scale work and striations are beautifully handled here as well. Once you hit the midsection, you have a good indication of the Giga scapula, as well as the rib cage beneath the skin work here. I like seeing the sagging skin down around the gut, really gives it a sense of weight, and you can see that the scale work continues all the way down that slightly curved tail, complete with a couple of osteoderms thrown in for good measure. You can see that the most dorsal row of crocodilian scoots make it about 3/4 of the way down the tail, while the other rows taper out around the hip. The skin and scale detail is just as nicely done on the opposite side. You can see some nice bunching up around the torso as the thigh pushes the skin in on itself at the midsection. Now, I'm not sure why, but the striations on the torso here do feel a bit random and sort of carved out. I kind of get what they were going for here, and it's better on the neck, but for some reason it just doesn't work on the flanks here. Nitpicks, no doubt, but I can't have this review being too one-sided, can I? The feet of this figure feature some beautifully weathered toe claws, with sort of browns and gray paints over the black bases. Now that's a detail I always appreciate. You can see that the back of the toes have the sort of standard plate scaling with smaller reticula sprinkled throughout, giving them an incredibly bird-like foot. I'm particularly fond of how the toes on the left foot are splayed out as they push into the base there, and the wrinkle work around the joints really helps sell the movement and weight of the creature. The musculature is really nice as well, particularly that bulging calf in the left leg. You can also see all the pulling, flexing tendons in the ankle, and then you've got the enormous beefy thighs of this figure. All of that just makes for a very impressive and powerful looking piece. The arms are also extremely well muscled, but not overly large. You can see the nice rounded shoulders adorned with some osteoderms, as well as the flexing biceps and triceps. The hand claws have the same weathered coloration as the toe claws, and the plate scaling is present here on the fingers as well. There are some seams here, but they are quite subtle and basically non-existent when you're looking at the whole thing. Moving along the underbelly, you can get a good look at the musculature in the lower jaw, as well as the sagging bunching up skin in the throat region. Once you hit the midsection, you can see the treatment of the pectorals, and the scale work down here appears to be more rectangular in nature. There's some really nice folds of skin hanging down around the gut, as well as pulling away from the midsection with the movement of the legs, and all of that has been adorned with the crisp scale work. As you run down the length of the tail, the scales become more tightly packed as they ride the striations out to the tip. Looking at this thing from a dorsal view, you can get a good look at that crocodilian armor. Now, this is a bit of a cliche for dinosaur depictions, and it looks like not even Giganotosaurus can escape it. Granted, it's something you see more on Spinosaurids, so I guess it's not entirely a Giganotosaurus trope per se, but I don't care. It's not something I'm too keen on either way. Still, that does not take away from how objectively well done it is. It looks the part of a crocodilian hide in every way. And even if you're not into that kind of thing, I think you'd be hard-pressed not to at least appreciate the sheer level of artistic merit on display here. You can even see that those crocodile-like scales move down onto the fronts of the thighs as a sort of armor-like treatment. So yeah, a lot of work went into this particular design choice, and God bless them, they sure do commit. Now, if we zoom out and take a look at the big picture of the figure, you can see that it's sculpted in a very confident pose, mid-stride, head held high and angled ever so slightly upwards, as if Behemoth is scenting the air. It's a very active yet believable posture that really sells this powerful, cocky look. So yeah, they certainly gave us a lot to talk about in terms of sculpt. In regards to fine detail, this figure certainly packs one heck of a punch, but it is suffering from one major pitfall: proportions. Yes, the proportions on this thing are a bit shoddy, which is very much a disappointment, as proportions are one area that really make it or break it for me. From certain angles, and especially on camera, it may look okay, but trust me, if you get this thing in hand, you'll know what I'm talking about. The tail is on the shorter side, tapering out just a little too quickly. The head is just a hair too large, and the feet look a little on the small side. Admittedly, it's nothing serious. We're talking features that could stand to be enlarged or shrunk 10 or so %, but on a high-end model like this, I really expect the design to be flawless, at least in terms of the big picture. Maybe if it was just one feature that was somewhat out of whack, I'd be less apt to notice, but all three of them working together, compounding one another, really stilts this model's look. Still, everything else is so impressive in terms of the sculpt work that it manages to assuage some of my distaste in the proportions. And like I said, seeing it from certain angles does help in some cases. Now let's talk paint. I mentioned in my unboxing video that this has been quite possibly the single hardest decision I've ever made between variants. Technically not tons of competition there. I have a nasty habit of buying up variants of cheaper models like the Rebor stuff. It's really just the Nanmu stuff I refuse to buy variants of. That's a rabbit hole I cannot allow myself to fall down. Anyway, this Giganotosaurus comes in two color schemes, the tiger variant you see before you, and the sort of Viserion after the White Walkers got a hold of him # spoiler alert for a 3 years old Game of Thrones episode color scheme. I opted for the tiger variant after a ton of flip-flopping. Ultimately, it was my love for warm tones on dinosaurs and the sort of predatory look of the palette that won me over. And no, I cannot spend another $100 to get the Viserion variant, gorgeous as it may be. Maybe if this YouTube channel ever starts picking up, we'll talk, but until then, nope, just the one for me. But talking about this color scheme specifically, you can see there is an absolute ton of paint on this model, and multiple application techniques to boot, which really helps to sell that premium appearance. Looking at the head alone, you can see we have airbrushing, dry brushing, washes, maybe even a bit of watercolor in the stripes. The tones used range from a sort of cream to a golden yellow and rusted orange. The stripes are a dark brown and the washes used are a sort of burgundy coloration. It's an absolute ton of color and it's all been beautifully applied. This is not a color scheme I have seen on a Giganotosaurus before, but it's certainly inspired by the tiger-striped raptors of the Lost World. So if you were a fan of those raptor designs, then I think this color palette is a no-brainer. I gotta eat my own words about not liking color schemes that are derived from extant animals, because this tiger aesthetic really works on this sculpt. As far as the size of this figure goes, this thing absolutely lives up to its title of Behemoth. It is an absolutely massive beast. If I bring in my tape measure here, you can see that it is roughly 17 inches long, or 43 centimeters from tip of snout to tip of tail. But if you went along the curve of the spine, you'd actually be closer to about 19 inches long. When on his base, he stands in at around 7.5 inches off the ground, or around 19 centimeters. Giganotosaurus maxed out at around 43 feet in length, which would put Behemoth here in that 1/27 scale range. Of course, the animal in Dominion could be scaled up a bit, so perhaps this will wind up falling closer to that 1/35th scale than we realize. That is, if this turns out to be anything like the design we'll get in the movie. Otherwise, who cares if that Giga is bigger than 43 feet? Let's get into some size comparisons, starting off with the Giganotosaurus gang in increasing order of size. First up, we have the Carnegie Giga, who will only stand if I lean him on Behemoth's leg, like so. And he looks like he's hiding behind his big brother at the playground because a bully's been picking on him. Show me which one stole your bike. Oh no, he died. But yeah, Behemoth here just absolutely towers over that figure, and honestly, you're going to be seeing a lot of that in these comparisons. Next up, we have the Safari Ltd Giganotosaurus from their 2017 lineup, a fan favorite amongst safari connoisseurs. He actually doesn't fare half bad in regards to his length, but in terms of his height, yeah, he's a shrimp next to Behemoth here. Then we have the Eofauna Giganotosaurus, which is very likely the objectively best offering out there for a scientific model of this animal, even if he's as shaky on his feet as the Carnegie offering. You know what's kinda sad? He's only a couple of inches shorter than Behemoth in terms of the length, but is absolutely dwarfed when it comes to his height and mass, if that tells you anything about how googly Behemoth's overall proportions are. So yeah, if you're sleeping on this Eofauna Giga, don't. And here we see the Papo Giganotosaurus. When threatened by a superior model, the Papo Giganotosaurus will rear up to its full height, 7 inches to be exact, and will splay its appendages in a starfish manner as an intimidation display. This is a remarkable defense adaptation against almost nothing. Sure, it may be useful if you run into an ill-tempered bear, but just try it if you find yourself in front of a speeding vehicle, or on the receiving end of a shotgun blast. Kind of just makes you a bigger target, the opposite effect of what you would want, really. And now we have Lucas, the Giganotosaurus by PNSO. Out of all of the Giganotosaurus comparisons, I think Lucas is the most display compatible with Behemoth. There's something about the color palette and style of scale work that just makes Lucas look like a subadult version of Behemoth. He is also unique in that he's one of the few offerings thus far that actually puts up a decent fight when it comes to detail and paintwork. And of course, the big kahuna himself, it's the Vitae Giganotosaurus, and boy oh boy, is this a standoff. The Vitae offering puts up a good fight in terms of the length, but doesn't quite stack up to Behemoth's height. This could be attributed to the pose, but again, it showcases how wacky Behemoth's proportions are in comparison. In terms of both paint and detail, the Vitae figure is a bit more of what you would expect from a scientific model, with the less defined integument and more conservative design elements. Although the skull shape is a bit off, I must say. The paint job is also very well done with all sorts of layers of coloration, and the base is still the best in my collection. But Behemoth's added size and crisp sculpt work is really giving the Vitae offering a run for its money, and honestly, I don't know which of these Gigas is the true top dog of my Giga gang. I guess they both are, but for different reasons. I'll tell you right now, we're not getting the W Dragon Giganotosaurus. Nope, I won't do it. Perish the thought. Instead, enjoy this group shot of all my Giganotosaurus models together. As you can see, when they're all side by side, they are virtually indistinguishable from one another, and as such make for great display companions. Honestly, if you have one, you have them all, so take your pick. Just kidding. Now let's get into the Nanmu comparisons, going smallest to biggest again. First up, we have the Berserker Raptor, aka the Indoraptor, and boy howdy is that thing ever tiny next to this Giganotosaurus. I think they look great together though, and I'm looking forward to rounding out my Jurassic villain collection down the road. Next up, we have the Ankylosaurus Mace, both the standard and injured version. And yeah, I like Mace's spirit, trying to protect his injured buddy there, but I don't think there's much to be done against Behemoth here. Cut your losses, buddy. Survival of the fittest. And then we have Ranger, the Carnotaurus. Honestly, at this point, Carnotaurus has been used as a punching bag for so long in the Jurassic franchise, I wonder what sort of abuse it'll suffer at the hands of the Giganotosaurus in Dominion. And now here it is with Tower Shield, the Sinoceratops. I don't care how big of a shield you have, even if it could defend an entire tower. When you're faced with someone like Behemoth, all there is to do is die. Just curl right up and wait for the end. Next, here it is with Blade the Allosaurus, the other bebased Nanmu dino I currently have in my collection. We're starting to get closer in terms of the length, but we've still got a ways to go for the height. I do like how the colors match though, that's kinda nice, and just as a general note, yeah, all of Nanmu's stuff looks like it 100% belongs together, so that's always nice when it comes to displaying them. And next up, here it is with Supplanter, the Spinosaurus, and dang, Behemoth makes that guy look small. It's not just in terms of the height or length, Behemoth has a ton of extra girth. That's something else I forgot to mention. This is one of the heaviest models in my collection. It is just a solid piece of plastic. And all of that extra bulk really makes these other big Nanmu figures look small in comparison. Like here it is with the Alpha Tyrannosaurus Rex, which is still probably one of my favorite pieces in my collection, but if this is what we can expect from Dominion, I think Rexy's gonna have her work cut out for her if she's going to be taking down the Giga. Let's be honest, that's exactly what's going to happen, because of course Rexy's gotta be the hero in the end, but I think she's gonna need more than just one raptor to help her out this time. Sorry, Blue. And now, here it is with the Mosasaurus, aka Lord of the Abyss. Gotta love these names Nanmu gives their figures. And yeah, the Mosasaurus is plenty bigger than Behemoth, but the artistic merit is sorely lacking on that figure when compared to these large theropods from Nanmu. Let's wrap up dinosaur comparisons with the biggest Nanmu friend we have. It's Bastion, the Apatosaurus. And that is an absolutely gorgeous and massive figure, but I think I can see him starting to sweat. He's getting Indominus Rex flashbacks while he's staring at Behemoth here. And of course, gotta bring in Chris Pratt, who is definitely in trouble if this is what he's gonna deal with in Dominion. I actually have a leaked still from the film. Here it is. The working title of the movie was Jurassic World, Owen Grady's Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day. And just as a final comparison shot, here it is with the previous big bads of the Jurassic franchise. Like I said before, I really have no idea if this is the design we can expect from Dominion. I thought I read somewhere that Nanmu have some connections to Universal, but that could be false. And even if it was true, I doubt Universal would be cool with Nanmu putting out a design that would spoil the look of the dinosaur from the film that's still 2 years away. Honestly, I can see Nanmu doing us dirty, releasing this Giga now, then making a Dominion version after the movie comes out. Kinda like what they did when they gave us the Buck Rex color scheme on their Alpha Tyrannosaurus Rex mold, then turned around and made an actual proper buck. Regardless of how it all plays out, it's cool to have stylized versions of the holy trinity of the big bad theropods. And that was my long-winded look at the Nanmu Giganotosaurus Behemoth. Overall, I think this is an objectively impressive and well-done model. It's got size and visual appeal to spare, and there is no way it wouldn't be a showstopper in any collection. The sculptural detail is so incredible, and the paint job is jaw-droppingly eye-catching and gorgeously applied. Honestly, if the proportions were just ever so slightly adjusted and the articulated jaw handled just a bit better, I would be hard-pressed to say anything bad about it. It's easily one of the best things Nanmu has done so far, and definitely one of the more impressive pieces in my collection. That being said, those two issues are something I would expect to see on cheaper models, not high-end statues. With that in mind, this one does fall down a peg or two in the grand scheme of things. Regardless, there is no rating I could give this thing other than Dynamite, and if you're craving a nice stylized Giganotosaurus that lives up to the name of Giant Southern Lizard, then I think there is no other way to go. As always, I want to know what you guys think of Behemoth. Do you own him yet? Are you planning on picking him up? What is your favorite Nanmu theropod so far? And are you hoping this is the design we'll get for the Giganotosaurus in Dominion? It's just now occurring to me that some people may not be aware that Giganotosaurus is showing up in Dominion, so if that was a spoiler to you, I do apologize and hope you can forgive me. Anyway, thank you all so much for tuning in to this very long review and sticking with me till the end if you did. I greatly appreciate it. Your support is the greatest gift I could receive on my birthday, and with that cheesy sentiment out of the way, I think I'm going to go have me some cake. So thanks again for watching, I hope you all enjoyed it, and I hope to see you soon for the next one. Until then, take care out there, and bye-bye.